Our guest of honor, Ong Ye Kung, Minister for Health, distinguished guests, colleagues and friends, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to all of you attending the 15th edition of the Singapore Economic Policy Forum. This annual forum is organized by the Economic Society of Singapore with NUS, NTU, SMU and SUSS in rotation. This year's forum is jointly organized with NTU's Economics Division in the School of Social Sciences. Established in 1956, the Economic Society of Singapore is a non-profit organization of economists, professionals, academicians, policymakers, with a very important mission that is the common interest in economics. The primary objective of the society is to raise public awareness, stimulate public interest, debate in economic issues and challenges that are relevant to Singapore and the region. With that in mind, the ESS organizes the policy forums annually to provide a leading local platform to facilitate economic policy discussions. Being a small and open economy, effective policy making has always been of paramount importance for the survival of Singapore. Foresight and prudence have done well in shaping past policies, bringing Singapore to what it is today. Many related recent events, both global and local, in public health and the broader economy have accelerated the ebbs and flows that comes with shocks and uncertainties. This can take its toll on the collective psyche and may bias us towards short-termism. While it is necessary to address critical immediate issues facing the nation, considerations of a way forward peppered with optimism, foresight and prudence is still needed. Singapore had just celebrated its 58th year of independence. Its economic transformation has been nothing short of a real miracle. Its per capita GDP rose from $5,816 in 1965 to $92,956 in 2022 at 2015 market price. Gross GDP, in short, has been a mainstay measure of our economic progress over decades. Countries often use these GDP figures as indicators of progress or well-being, and countries with high GDP are often labeled as developed countries. But does a high GDP reflect the well-being and happiness of society? Does economic growth enrich society? The short answer to this is both a yes and a no. Yes, because high GDP means the country's income is high enough to enable both increased consumption and investment. It also enables high employment rates. In short, jobs, security, and income. Increases in per capita income, due in part to increases in economic growth, at least allows us for more options, as consumers would have more goods to choose from. This increase in choices can in one way be considered as welfare enhancing. But if this economic growth comes about from more and more resources poured into work at the expense of leisure, family bonding, and serenity, then we cannot be sure that this increase in income brought about by higher economic growth is welfare enhancing. Concomitantly, higher sustained growth will mean higher inflation, and so the cycle of more work to earn more incomes to afford more and higher quality goods will continue. Some old goods will also disappear as new goods appear, new models, new brands, such that it is no longer straightforward to say that more goods being made available to a person will increase his or her welfare. There is, however, a more serious problem with too much dependency on economic growth, because in some societies, the fruits of that growth are often not shared appropriately. The rise in inequality is often blamed on the results of globalization brought about by increases in economic growth. There is really no perfect economic system that will ensure that everyone gains and no one loses in this system. Markets and international trade, despite some misgivings, provide clear benefits to society. Students of economics will know that there will always be some market failures, which then call for intervention on the part of governments to correct these failures, as in the case of direct provision of some public goods, in regulation, in pollution control, and in ensuring safety and health for society, as well as some social safety nets for those fallen by the wayside. These corrective actions on the part of governments may include taxes and subsidies, as in the case of pollution measures, accessibility to health and education, and ensuring social mobility. But the prerequisite to achieving all these actions requires that a country's GDP or income must grow first. The issue of GDP not being holistic enough is not a new one, but it has not been fully explored in the case of Singapore. Instead of aiming for higher and higher economic growth, Singapore could aim for a higher quality of life and increase overall society's welfare. The goal is to find a number of welfare components and then chart them over time. This does not mean abandoning the GDP, but rather to find supplementary measurements for welfare intangibles that contribute to a good quality of life. The government can implement this by collecting the relevant data from population census. The process must invariably involve Singaporeans as stakeholders to elicit their preferences and values. Availability of non-market environmental goods such as parks and greenery is important so as to allow people to unwind, reduce stress, and increase their propensity to engage in leisure activities. These non-market gains, like enjoying nature more, being more health conscious through exercises, having less dysfunctional families, through more quality bonding activities, and so on, could be accounted for, measured, monetarily valued, and tracked over time. Such is why the organizers have gone with the theme, Determinants on the Quality of Life in Singapore, to discuss considerations and possible pathways to achieve a high quality of life in Singapore. And I look forward to these issues being discussed today at the forum by our lineup of excellent speakers. In defining future pathways, it might be worthwhile to seek some inspiration from a certain Dr. Albert Winsemius, who was Singapore's external economic advisor from 1961 to 1984. While he was Dutch, Winsemius fell in love with Singapore and spent the latter part of his life working with Singapore's pioneering leaders. He happens to be the namesake of my chair professorship, which I am presently holding. In the founding years of Singapore, Winsemius advised prioritizing stability while preparing for long-term growth and development. Parallels can certainly be drawn to the present. Singapore's present challenges have to be addressed and should rightly be a priority, but there is still a need to pair this with effective long-term economic policy making. In this age of uncertainty and complexity, it is vital that Singapore continues to monitor and transform its economy dynamically, resiliently, and sustainably. While Winsemius was very successful in recommending pro-market policies, he was also very aware of market failures and the need for effective state intervention. Ultimately, Winsemius also cautioned that economic growth is just a means and not an end by itself. This reminds us again that it is the quality of life, the betterment of society, a good, clean environment that matters in a sustainable economy and the nation going forward. Singapore's clear challenge for the future is how to provide a way of life that goes beyond the income measures and where the concept of livability needs to be at the forefront in all public policies. As quality of life of nation's citizens is not only an important prerequisite to the country's productivity, it is also a crucial barometer for its citizens' enjoyment of life and reduces the burden that society has to shoulder when otherwise in poor health. Our guest of honor, Minister Ong, as Minister for Health, is of course very well placed to speak on these matters. Minister Ong has been very active in both the regular media as well as the social media in promoting individual responsibilities to achieve good health. He has also recently launched the Healthier SG program. I thank him for gracing our event and being our keynote speaker today. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank Minister Ong for taking time after his speech to give out the prizes for the annual Outstanding Economics Teacher Award. As an educator myself, I know that our teachers have been vital in sustaining the delivery of a high-quality education. I would like to thank all teachers that have participated. Your efforts are deeply appreciated, and the society is grateful to our two sponsors for this award. First, Publisher World Scientific, and second, Professor Duffy Gunter for their generosity and keen interest. A special thanks goes out to Ms. Chiang Hui Min from the Ministry of Education, who is on our council and who succeeded Ms. Tan Se Tin in her role representing ESS in this award. Additionally, I'm also grateful to the Educational Committee of the Society headed by Associate Professor Tan Swee Liang at SMU. ESS also thanks Associate Professor Feng Chu, and NTU colleagues for this collaboration in this year's Singapore Economic Policy Forum. Finally, I would like to thank Ms. Vivian Tan, our Society's Senior Manager, and her team, our two ESS Assistant Secretaries, Mr. Zack Lee and Dr. Quah for working out the arrangements for this event. Without further ado, I would now like to say a few words about Minister Ong and to invite Minister Ong to give his keynote speech. Now, Minister Ong is no stranger to all of us. You know, we always watch him in the media, in the social media, in all kinds of activities. And I think he's the only minister that actually does a lot of interactions with all kinds of health providers, which is quite amazing, including martial arts, physiotherapy, advices for knees. I enjoy watching this because I do learn a lot from these short episodes on the social media. Now, Mr. Ong is the Minister for Health. He was elected Member of Parliament for Sembawang Group Representation Constituency in September 2015 and was re-elected in July 2020 in Sembawang GRC. He had held the positions for Minister for Transport, Minister for Education, the Second Minister for Defence, and board member of the Monetary Authority of Singapore. He's also the chairman of the Chinese Development Assistance Council. Prior to joining politics, he has held various positions in government, including being the Chief Executive Officer of the Singapore Workforce Development Agency and Deputy Chief Negotiator for the US-Singapore Free Trade Agreement. He served several years in the labor movement as the Deputy Secretary General of the NTUC and spent some time in the private sector, including being a Director of Group Strategies at Keppel Corporation. Minister Ong graduated from the London School of Economics and Political Science, UK, and the Institute of Management Development in Switzerland. So, having said that, let me now invite Minister Ong to address us. Thank you very much.